No Carl yet? Well, I don't see Carl, and it is 12:01. We are live on YouTube and ready to start. Do any of our board members want to step in as vice chair, or would you rather wait another minute? But still be thinking about that plan B.
Oh, this is Ruth. I'll do it as a plan B, but I'd like to give Carl a couple of minutes.
Okay, I think Leslie, I just heard her yell. She's going to give him a call.
Okay, I was going to say maybe somebody should give him a call.
Hi, everybody. Carl is on his way. He'll be here in a minute here. Oops.
Hi,
Hi, Carl.
sorry.
That's okay.
Let me find an agenda here real quick. Come on.
Carl, while you're looking for that, I just wanted to let you know that I am only available until right before 1 o'clock and we'll have to leave the meeting. I hope that doesn't. I can't see who else is present. I know Ruth is here, but wanted to make sure that we had enough.
We do, because Melanie's here. And for some reason or another, I am not getting the emails from Leslie that have the agenda and everything.
And they should be shooting out straight from, well, it's on Zoom. I mean, it's on the website. Do you want to go out and grab it from the website, Carl, or do you want us to send you another agenda packet?
I can grab it from the website real quick. And that's why I, that's usually when I calendar this. Sorry. We got the, come on. Now my computer just has to work. It's coming.
So I'm gonna go ahead and hide everybody that doesn't have their video on, so we're not so little
Okay.
right now.
Minutes.
We do have, even though Natasha doesn't have her video on this second, we obviously know she's here, so.
Okay, I'm still trying to find the agenda.
Is anyone else having like a recall situation happening? I can like hear everything everyone says twice. It's like the YouTube is playing. Is anyone else having that? All right, I might X out and come right back because it's weird. It's like this constant echo.
Gee, you're gonna hold us up. I can't believe you do that.
It's better than hearing you talk 3 times the same sentence, Carl.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Let me make sure I
Okay.
have all of my stuff closed too, Mel.
Do you have something else open there, Mel?
I don't think so. So I'll just X everything. I'll be right back.
All right. So I can do the beginning stuff because we do have a quorum,
Yes,
right? So let me do that. Jill, are you ready?
yep,
All right, so this is, I apologize, it's 12:08. It's June 16th, the regular board meeting of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. I'll call it to order. We can see who's here, but we are going to have somebody introduce our new communication specialist, Macy. And
Yes,
maybe that's the communication specialist who introduces herself.
I will introduce Macy for her. Everybody, this is Macy McPherson. Hopefully I pronounced her last name correctly with the Mick and the Max and the fur and the fear. So it's McPherson, I believe. And Macy is our new communication specialist. We are delighted to have her. She has come in and hit the ground running, working on, as we all know, this is a, on the board and staff, this is a new position for MRA. And so she's essentially, digging through documents, websites, the communications study, developing her own work plan. She has been meeting with Spider and Ginny at the city, our communications director at the city, all the other communication specialists that work for the city, and then they come together as a group. She's met a lot of the staff. I did walk old school. We went to City Hall and we walked around to all the departments to try to meet as many people in person that we could, masked up and such forth, as it was prudent at the time. And she's also been meeting with some of our city council people and working through that body. So we're completely happy to have her here, and she's a delight. And welcome, Macy. This is our board.
Thank you. So nice to meet everybody. I look forward to meeting you all in person soon.
Okay. Well, welcome, Macy, and I promise I'll have it more together next time. How's that? We've got some May 9th or May 19th minutes. Does everybody have a chance to review them? If so, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Ruth has moved. There a second?
Second,
Tasha's second. Any discussion, public comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Public comments and announcements of matters that aren't on our action item agenda.
I
Yeah.
have, Carl, I have 4 folks in the attendee room. I have a caller who has raised their hand. They would like to talk. And so the caller with the last 3 digits, 240, I'm going to hit my button. So you should be able to talk in a moment here. Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Can
Oh,
you
thanks.
please
Yeah,
introduce? Yeah, great.
This is Daniel Carlino calling in from the city council, just on a lunch break from work. But the one thing I wanted to comment on was just maybe looking into see if we could move the MRA board meeting time to a time that's not during the regular workday for people in the future, just because I think it's been a little bit hard for public participation and trying to bring the public in on the process when all the meetings are during the time that most people are at work. So I guess my suggestion would be not between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. just because that's when most people are at work in the future. Next time you all think about switching the board meeting times. And I know we have got the same problem with city council committee meetings, but at least our Monday night is at 6 p.m. So we end up with a lot more participation. But that was all. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, anybody else, Joe?
No, I don't see anybody else with their hand raised, Carl.
All right. Moving to the action items. First Security Bank, 2500 Garfield Street. Annie, this is yours.
Good afternoon, Annie Gorski, Deputy Director. Yeah, share my screen here briefly. Okay, this is, so the item before you today is a proceed without prejudice for the deconstruction of a building at 2500 Garfield Street. This is First Security Bank plans to build a new corporate office building at the corner of Garfield and Dearborn. And they would like to deconstruct the existing building at 2500 Garfield to make space for the new building. They have reached out to deconstruction contractors and have learned that there is, given the availability, there's a window of availability of a contractor who's able to do that work in June. They would like to come back to the board in July for a request for funding from ERD3 to support the broader redevelopment, specifically the public improvements on the site and the deconstruction. They're coming in June 1st because they'd like to do that deconstruction prior to the July meeting, given this deconstruction contractor has some availability in June and is booked in July and beyond. They know and is clear in the board action that this, if the board chooses to approve this proceed without prejudice, that it does not commit the MRA board to future approvals, funding, or reimbursement for this project. They know there's no guarantee in July that this would be approved. So Kevin Wilkerson from First Security Bank, or the representative for First Security Bank, is also here and can share more details if you would like.
Kevin, do you have anything to add? I see him here with his phone on mute.
Kevin?
Okay. Any questions from the board? From anybody? I take it, Annie, this is just a real simple contractor availability issue, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Nobody has any questions? Is there a motion? Somebody?
I'll move to approve the recommendation.
Right? Staff recommendation, and that is that they may proceed without prejudice for deconstruction with the understanding that there is no commitment of any funds if and when they do make application, correct?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion at all? Further discussion? Or public comment? Jill?
Carl, Daniel is still on and he has a comment.
Okay.
I think you can talk, Daniel.
Yeah,
Yep, we can hear you.
oh, okay, great. Yeah, I know that, you know, in the past, whenever redevelopment was done at the Stockman banks and tax increment financing was used, I think that was probably the most unpopular, like MRA, you know, funds used that I've ever heard of. And I just think it would make it a lot easier for the communication specialist and for the community to support the MRA and support tax increment financing if we aren't using it towards banks, especially a corporate office for a bank that already has many offices in town. And I know you're not deciding on funds today, but this is kind of the first step towards giving them funds. So I definitely encourage everybody on the MRA to not to vote against giving any tax money towards banks. Thanks.
Well, and let me just correct you because I think it's very important that this is not the first step towards giving them funds. Because the motion specifically says that there's no commitment to give funds. And I don't want there to be any impression that any other than that is the case. Any additional comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. The next item, is wooden images building removal. Annette? This is you?
Yes. Good afternoon. Annette Marcia. So I'm a project manager and redevelopment specialist with the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. I am going to try to share my screen here. Okay, there we go. A little over a year ago, the city of Missoula, through Missoula Water, which is part of the Department of Public Works and Mobility, purchased 2 parcels of property adjacent to their facility. So Missoula Water is on West Broadway Street, and they purchased a building to the east, a computer store, and a building to the west, which is the Wooden Images building, the one that we're going to talk about today. They purchased these buildings to potentially use them for additional office and storage space. And it's contiguous to the Missoula Water building, the Recompute building. They've expanded into that as well already. The Wooden Images building, upon closer examination, it was determined to be uninhabitable and was essentially just land banked. This winter, the roof failed on that building, and it has now become a safety hazard and just just becoming decrepit. And so Missoula Water would like to take that building down now, and is requesting some TIF assistance to remove the building. The Missoula Water will be contributing. They had some cost savings on renovations in the Missoula Water building. They had some cost savings, and they'll be applying that toward the building removal. And also because there is some asbestos in the building, our brownfields revolving loan fund can contribute some funding as well. My memo, there was an error in there. I indicated that the brownfields funds were coming from a cleanup grant, I'm sorry, an assessment grant. That's not accurate. It's a revolving loan fund. I'll just, the reason I'm showing you this graphic is that this is a parcel of publicly owned property within the West Broadway master plan study area. And just wanted to show you, that it's contiguous, and one of the benefits to having this much publicly owned property contiguously is that it allows the city a lot of control over how that parcel of property develops. In the master plan, it was envisioned that probably the Sleepy Inn site would develop first, which I think is starting to move. The Missoula Water site, as you're well aware, the Missoula Water long-term vision is for the Department of Public Works to move to a new facility on Scott Street. And when that happens, Missoula Water will move up there as well. And that will free up this entire parcel of property for redevelopment. And that redevelopment in the master plan is envisioned to have this new Main Street as a spine to this new neighborhood, a lot of green space, and then mixed use residential, commercial hung off of that. So that's just sort of the background. The breakdown, the building removal, the overall estimate is just a little under $70,000, or I'm sorry, a little under $80,000. Missoula Water will be contributing a $6,000 savings from their construction project, and our brownfields grant will be a little over $13,000. So the final TIF request is $60,722. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will open it up for, we have Logan McGinnis from Missoula Water and Tyler Walls from the Brownfields office to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, well, Logan, do you have anything to add before we open it up for questions?
No, and it summed it up very well. Thanks.
Okay. Questions?
This is Ruth, not a question really, but I would like to emphasize what, as Annette pointed out in her cover sheet to the memo for this request, is that it not only aligns with that West Broadway plan, but also aligns with our ERD 2 9-year strategic exit plan, and helps the city meet its 2020 to 2023 strategic goals, consistent with the safety and wellness and community design and livability goals of the city of Missoula and their strategic plan. So I appreciate that.
And those plans will form the background for Missoula's plan for the area for housing, et cetera, correct? Is that right, Annette?
Those plans meaning the strategic plans?
Right.
Yes, they all sort of talk to each other. The West Broadway master plan referenced the city's strategic vision, or strategic plan for overall community. And this building and all of those buildings, because this is an urban renewal district and because redevelopment of the West Broadway area is a relatively high priority for urban renewal too. At some point, I think we expect that MRA will be asked to assist with removing all of the buildings that are coming forward for redevelopment as this area redevelops. So for instance, the Sleepy Inn site is beginning to move. We expect that when that happens, MRA will be asked for assistance to remove that. And likewise with Missoula Water, recompute, the Wooden Images building. And if there are other private developers that come forward with redevelopment, it's possible and probably likely that they with area would ask for assistance with building removal. So this
those would be part of a project. I mean, the only problem I have with this is, and help me make the justification because I don't have a serious problem, is that we have in the past, I know years ago, turned down a request from a private developer who was trying to sell property that had on it a collapsing, troublesome building, and had that he couldn't sell the property with that building on it. And so he came to the MRA with a request for money to destroy the building or deconstruct or demolish the building, and then with development to come later. And we said, no, that's not redevelopment. Come to us with a plan to redevelop this thing and a viable plan, and we say yes. So are we doing something different here for the public that we wouldn't do for private? And if so, what's the justification for it?
I see your point. I guess that I would argue that we are not doing something. I think there are a couple things that are a little different here. One is that this building is becoming a safety hazard because of the condition of the building. And
a public safety hazard because it's publicly owned, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And as it becomes more decrepit, so the situation that we're in now that we kind of bounced around in the office is, do we fix the roof on a building that is in awful condition right now, and then come back later in 5 years and remove that building when there's redevelopment on that full site? Or do we remove that building now when it's in this decrepit condition, because it's been determined that this building is not, without a considerable amount of money, is not a usable building.
Okay.
And so this is where we bounced it back and forth. Do we put some money into it to make it a usable building for a few years, or do we remove it now when it's in this condition, knowing that in 5 years or so we would be removing it anyway? So that's where we came forward on this decision.
Well, I think it's more along the lines of what, for example, what we did at Orange and Front, where we had a piece of city property that was in bad condition, that was slated for redevelopment, and we took incremental steps to get that public property in better shape for redevelopment. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair, yes.
And Logan, is that in line with what you guys are thinking?
Yes, yeah, think we all see this, we know there's a desire to build out this master plan and know that our usage of the, street frontage property for just utility purposes probably isn't the best use of the property. So, I think this is just kind of the first step towards moving forward with that master plan vision.
And I would add that, and I really appreciated this when Missoula Water, when we were talking, Missoula Water and DPW is looking at the potential to do something temporary use on this site, something that would be of a benefit to the neighborhood, something like a food truck or something that is a temporary use that the neighborhood has indicated would be beneficial to them. And in the master planning process, one of the things that we heard a lot in the neighborhood was the desire for more restaurant and beverage type opportunities in the neighborhood. So that would, so I really appreciated that Missoula Water is looking at a way to temporarily use this site that would benefit more than just their uses.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? If not,
Well,
yes, Ruth?
well, not that precedent should ever dictate policy, but I think we did do something similar to this with an old theater out on 93 that was being vandalized, and the police and fire department came to us and asked us to deconstruct that because it was a safety hazard. And I think this is sort of the same as that, is the way I was looking at it. And with, even though at that time there was no plan for redevelopment on the theater site, but it has since been redeveloped. So I see that similar to that, even though this is a public building. So I'm in favor of this.
Okay, anything else from me? Mel?
Yeah, I was thinking of that same instance, Ruth, and wondering, was Stockman Bank, I think Stockman Bank already had, because it was CTA, you know, that made the way for Stockman, but I do think Stockman was already working on that project. So it was like, we're coming to you early. You know what I mean? I was thinking that.
Yeah, we're not ready to start building, but.
Not ready, but we are coming to this.
Right, that's sort of what I remember. I just, I think we've set up the difference between this and what we've done in the past, where there isn't a plan, and certainly the plans that you mentioned earlier, Ruth, indicate that there is quite a plan for this area. But also, we do have more latitude with public property than we do with private property, and we do have a responsibility with the public property consistent with these plans to get them in shape for redevelopment. And it sounds like that what went on here was a good discussion with staff and folks concerning what was the most economical way to deal with this problem. And this sounds like that they solved that problem, as well as an interim use that might be beneficial until there is redevelopment. So I'm satisfied personally that we've laid out the difference between this and a private person that comes in and just says, look, I don't know what I'm doing with this property yet, but I need you to help me, tear it down, and us being reluctant to do that because that's having a vacant piece of property is not true redevelopment. So I muddied the waters enough. So is there a motion?
I can make a motion. I have it in front of me.
Okay.
I would move that we approve the request from the Department of Public Works and Mobility in an amount not to exceed $60,722 for deconstruction of the building located at 1359 West Broadway Street with reimbursement for eligible costs upon receipt of proof of payment and lien waivers, and authorize the board chair to sign a development agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I'll just make the
Oh,
I
go
can't.
ahead, please.
that I favor this, and the sooner we move to redevelop this area, the better, in my opinion. We've invested a lot of public time resources in improving the safety in the area, and I'm thinking of the island park space and the trails in that area. And the more redevelopment occurs in this area, the safer and more usable it will be for our public. So I favor this this demo at this time.
Thank you. And also, are there any additional comments or any public comments, Jill?
Carl, I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised under our attendees. I will tell you, Carl, that you are very, very difficult to hear. I'm not sure if that's anything that you can do on your end, but everybody else on my screen, when I turn my volume up in order to hear you, is very loud. So FYI, you're muffled.
Sorry. Okay. Seeing no additional comments or public comments, I'll talk, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The motion passes unanimously. And we can go to our next item, which is the CIP.
Yeah, good afternoon, MRA board. I'm doing the same thing, Jill, kind of playing around with my volume here between Carl and some of the other people when they talk. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so we will jump into the MRE FY 2023 CIP list. It's budget season again, so the CIP is kind of part of that budgetary process. Just a couple things to say before I get into the list is the MRA board is not approving any TIF funds today with these projects for the CIP items. Kind of simply create a placeholder in the MRA budget, and these projects are really in the conceptual pre-development type stage, and as the projects are further developed, they will come back to the board and be presented to the board as specific TIF requests. First on the list, something happened here. What is going on? Let me close PowerPoint if I can. Well, let's see. Yeah, sorry about that. Some technical glitch here with the PowerPoint, it looks like. What the heck? Here we are. Let's try this again. Yeah, wow.
Todd, right now I just see blank screen and slide number 636. Maybe get out and get back in, or.
All right, you see in the are you seeing the beginning screen that I had up with the picture?
Nope.
No.
Ah, geez, what's going on here? All right, let me close this. You're probably seeing this.
Don't save it, Todd.
Now I gotta find it.
But is it easier to just share your memo?
I can get this up here in a second.
We have the memo, Todd.
All right, just give me a second. Let me try this again. Board memo, PowerPoint. All right, are you seeing my screen here? Am I showing you all this?
No, we haven't shared your screen.
All right, so now I've got it restarted, share screen. Let's see if it's going to cooperate. All right.
We're seeing it, Todd.
All right. Start the slides. Here we go. All right. The first item on the list is ERD3 Water Network Program. If you recall last year in the CIP, the board created the URD2 Water Network Program to build out the city water distribution system in deficient areas of URD2. So we are proposing to create the same program this year in URD3. As there are several areas in the Urban Renewal District 3 that are deficient in the water distribution system also. And on my exhibit here, I have met with Missoula Water, and we've identified the areas with the red lines for areas to reconstruct or areas to construct water mains. And we've identified 7 water mains. And what we're also looking at here, Adam over at Missoula Water put together this exhibit here, and it includes the fire hydrants and kind of a classification of what's going on with the fire hydrant flows. The blue crosses are fire hydrants that have, really good, greater than 1,500 gallon a minute water flows. And the yellow ones are kind of the intermediate 1,000 gallon to 1,500 gallon water flows, and then the red ones are less than 1,000 gallon water flows. And as we build out these water mains in these areas, we can kind of address some of those more deficient water hydrants or fire hydrants also to improve fire suppression water flows. So the goal of this program would be to build out the water system in ERD3 over time by budgeting $500,000 a year. And it looks like we could complete the water system out there in 6 years. And staff believes this is a reasonable and responsible approach for addressing the water deficiency problems in URD3, and also leave a legacy of removing impediments to redevelopment that would last beyond the sunset of the URD. Next on the list is the ERD2 Bitterroot Trail lighting. So the Bitterroot Trail traverses both District 2 and District 3. And so this is really a trail lighting project that would extend from the north part of Urban Renewal District 2 down to the South Reserve pedestrian bridge at the southern end of Urban Renewal District 3. This is a project that was highlighted or brought in the ERD2 9-year strategic exit plan that was recently adopted by the MRA board. And the lighting of this trail is, I think, has been a long desire of the city and the MRA, and to enhance the public safety of that entire length of that trail. And it's pretty evident that without assistance from the urban renewal districts, the lighting of the trail would not happen in the foreseeable future. So I think the long range goal of this project would be to have the trail lighted from Toole Avenue in downtown down to the South Reserve pedestrian bridge at the south end of URD3. That's kind of dependent on another project coming to fruition, which would be the MRL conversion of the MRL rail bridge to bike and pedestrian use. And I'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. As I said, this is kind of a project that covers Urban Renewal District 2 and Urban Renewal District 3, and also the gap between the two districts. And state urban renewal law allows use of tax increment to connect infrastructure outside of URD boundaries if it benefits the urban renewal district. And the gap from 3rd Street to 14th Street would be included in the URD 3 portion of the trail lighting project, as we feel that the district has more capacity to fund that infrastructure. And the trail lighting would connect both urban renewal districts and benefit both urban renewal districts by enhancing public safety for trail users within both districts. Moving on, well, I mentioned the, well, what I'm calling just now, I don't know if this has a real name, the Erd2 Bitterroot Trail MRL Bridge. This is also another project that is included in the Erd2 9-year strategic plan. And the city has received permission from MRL, who owns the bridge, to investigate the feasibility of converting that rail bridge into bike and pedestrian use. And that bridge would then provide a connection for the Bitterroot Trail, connecting the existing trail, which basically terminates around at the Milwaukee Trail intersection. And that would connect the existing trail to the Bitterroot Trail Pine Street project that we completed, MRA completed in 2020 over here. And so staff has begun drafting an RFP to hire a consultant to conduct a feasibility study for converting the bridge to bike ped use. And that consultant would also be tasked with developing a conceptual design of the converted bridge and include the bridge approaches on the north and south side of that bridge and how that approach will interact with the trail or the sidewalk network and crossing West Broadway, an MDT state route. And then we're also interested in getting a conceptual design of bringing the trail from the railroad elevation down to the park elevation and making the connections to the other trails systems, and then provide a probable cost of construction and a schedule to complete the conversion of the bridge to bike ped use. And then the final project on the list is the North Reserve Scott Street, URD Scott Street infrastructure. And back at the beginning of the year, the board approved the funding for design and engineering of the streets and utilities within the Redevelopment on Scott Street. And with this CIP item, staff would intend to move forward with the construction phase of the infrastructure necessary to support the development and also future redevelopment in the North Reserve Scott Street area. That project involves improving the west side right-of-way of Scott Street, extending Charlotte Street to the west to intersect with Shakespeare Street, which would be extended to the south, intersecting with the extended Palmer Street on the south end. And on this graphic, the green lines and the blue lines represent sewer and water infrastructure. And yeah, I think when the design is complete, we'd like to move forward with the construction of that infrastructure. And so the staff is recommending, let me quit sharing the screen here. Staff recommendation is that the board move to approve the MRA FY23 CIP for inclusion in the MRA FY23 budget and recommend the city council approve the CIP items for inclusion in the overall FY23 city budget.
Thanks, Todd. Questions? From anyone? So Todd, if not, I'll ask one, if I could, please.
Sure.
All the items, with the exception of the Erd3 Water Network program, are matters that we've discussed as a board and approved projects and or on the strategic plan for the elimination for the wind down of ERD 2. And while at first glance, the idea of doing an ERD 3, what the water project that we've committed to doing in ERD 2 is a good idea, does putting it in the CIP sort of jump the gun, or is this something that we need to talk about first before it ends up in the CIP?
Well, last year the CIP is where I first introduced, if I recall right, the ERD 2 Water and Network Program, and that was approved then into the CIP, and staff then, or I went and worked with Missoula Water to put together phase 1 of that project, and that was rolled into a sidewalk project that we're doing now, a water and sidewalk project. So I think, and we're following the same procedure this year in developing that, or in kicking off that ERD 3 water network program.
Okay. I mean, it's a big commitment, and I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with it. Are you?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there will also be a budget action item as well tied to these, correct? Jill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. All of the proposed MRA CIP projects are rolled into our budget as placeholders. They're obviously not approved yet because they're just an introduction of a project that we'd like to complete, and it's presented to the board. Then all those projects come back to you for final approval. So right now in the budget, you'll see that as a placeholder for those items. Some of them are funded in our ERD budget. Those that are large, that will require bonding, are in there without funding in the budget line item.
Todd, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, maybe. It might seem like we're jumping a little bit, but it is like Jill mentioned here, before any, we're not asking for a specific TIF request to be approved today. As phase 1 of that program is developed, I would then bring that back to the board as and you would approve money for design and engineering of it first of all. So that would be an opportunity there of whether or not you want to move forward with it or not on a specific phase. So each phase will come back to the board for approval. I think what we're doing now is just kind of adopting or approving a plan. Here's our plan, and here's how we're going to complete that water system build out. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. To me, I realize that there's no commitment until there's been a commitment of funds and a commitment to a specific project. But when we did certainly way back when we did the sidewalks, we talked about this would be a long-term commitment and we'd be doing this for a number of years. And was everybody comfortable with that idea before we had our first project? And obviously I thought we talked about the water in ERD 2 in the same kind of context, but you're saying we talked about it within the context of putting it within the CIP plan. I just want to make sure that people are comfortable with the idea that once we do this, we've made, I wouldn't call it a commitment because I don't want to get into trouble, but we've made some sort of public acknowledgement that this is a long-term project that we think's important and we think is something that is a good use of MRA funds. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the importance of putting it in the CIP.
Comment if.
Yeah, Tasha.
And a question, I guess. So the comment would be the magnitude of these projects on water main extensions. to me demonstrates the need that we do this. You can see from the individual estimates for these projects, these extensions are substantial. And because of that, there are significant barriers to redevelopment in these neighborhoods. Absent these extensions, private landowners would have to find a way to extend their projects to existing mains, and that could be quite cost prohibitive and may not allow for in these areas. Also, the absence of either fire suppression in this area or low flows that diminish the fire suppression that may exist is an important public safety issue for our community. So there's the comment. The question would be that it's true that this would need to go before City Council for approval, and we're just recommending this at this time. Is that right?
Yeah, it'd be rolled. The CIP would then be incorporated into the MRA budget. That budget is then folded into the overall city council, the overall city budget. So the city council will see these projects in that manner. It's kind and the CIP program is kind of good as a communication tool between departments. Other departments can look and see, and they'll see, oh, here's what's on MRA's radar, and that kind of ties into the non-action item that Annie has further down the agenda, where we're looking at what other departments are planning that in their CIPs that has some MRA funding tied to it. And just jumping back kind of on your comment, if you recall the Onyx Maps project, when MRA partnered with their new building on Stevens, what they had is they were in a situation where there was no water, no city water there. And I think the MRA participation was to extend a water line and bore underneath Brook Street and run that water line down. It might have been Kent Avenue, maybe over to their project area, and that's one way we could do this is piecemeal as projects come along, like we did there. I think, and talking as a staff, it was like in what we did with URD2 is kind of taking that proactive step that we're going to go ahead and build out these areas in the city water network to where if that redevelopment project doesn't happen to come in the life of the district, we've set that up in the future that water line's already there.
Okay, anything else? I mean, I think we understand, and I applaud the staff for bringing the idea forward. And clearly, when we did the ERD2 strategic planning, there was no pushback whatsoever from anybody about getting water in places where we need water as something that helps people and aids development and redevelopment. So, anything else? Anything else from anybody?
One more thing, maybe.
To answer, just follow up just briefly, Natasha, it is correct that the council does review annually the 5-year CIP as well as the budget. So we're coming to the board first for both those items and would do that each year. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I thought I'd just add a little kudos to the board. Maybe you might notice there's not a ERD3 sidewalk project as part of the CIP. We're currently constructing the ERD3 Southern Sidewalk project is under construction now, and when that's completed, we pretty much have done the sidewalk network in ERD3. There are a couple small areas that I'm taking action on right now, on one on South Avenue, west of the Brooks South Russell intersection, and some sidewalk work down around the vacant land south of the mall. I think so we made the choice to kind of take a pause here and a wait and see on those two areas.
Well, don't cause us sidewalk withdrawals. Yeah. So, all right. Mindful that Tasha needs to leave in a minute, or should have left a minute ago, something like that. I don't, if people have additional comments, or if there's any public comments, we, of course, should hear them. And if not, is there a motion to approve the CIP as presented?
Yes. I'll move that we approve the MRA fiscal year 23 CIP items for inclusion in the MRA fiscal 23 budget and recommend the city council approve the CIP items for inclusion in the FY 23 city budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any public comments?
Not seeing any public comments, Carl.
If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are now to the budget. Am I correct?
You are correct, and that is me. Let's see if I can share my screen. Bye, Tasha. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. Sorry we got started a little late. I apologize. We still have a quorum. And Jill,
Okay, let's see.
run us through what we need to know.
Can everybody see Riverfront Triangle budget?
Yeah, partial.
Let's see if I can make it smaller. I'm going to move it up. My apologies here. I'm going to move it to a different screen, see if I can get it.
Okay.
And here we go. How about now? Riverfront Triangle?
Well, we can see it. It's awful hard to read, but we've got our copy. I don't know about.
And I can make it bigger and scroll too.
Okay.
So this is our fiscal year 2023 proposed budget that I'm about to present. I did get a memo kind of summarizing the certain assumptions that I use when preparing our budget. And so I'm just going to kind of go through those, and I want to be mindful of your time too. You are, really versed in these rainbow reports and how they work. So I'm just going to start out with our beginning fund balance up here at the top of each of the urban renewal districts. Each of the urban renewal districts have one of these reports for those of the community that might be listening out there. We start at the top. We are in this black column right here. This is what we are working with now. And this beginning fund balance is an estimate. We estimate that balance based on where we think we're going to be with our projects that are ongoing right now, and how much of the tax increment revenue that was budgeted in this fiscal year is going to come in by the end of that year. And we have an accrual basis, a modified accrual basis of accounting. So we allow 60 days after the end of the fiscal year for that revenue to be collected, to be counted. And so that's kind of a moving target. But in general, we always use an estimate of 90% of revenue collections. So that's the assumption that I use there to come up with that beginning fund balance for the districts. Moving down under the revenue, we have our tax increment revenue. In the memo and in the monthly budget reports, I explain how our revenue is determined by taxable value times the mill levies of the taxing jurisdictions. The city has 7 taxing jurisdictions. And so we get a portion of the tax increment revenue from each of those taxing jurisdictions. Even though the city of Missoula adopts its budget this year by the end of August, based on the taxable values that they will receive from the Department of Revenue by the first Monday in August, that is just one out of the 7 taxing jurisdictions that will have set their mill levies. We have to wait for the other 7 to really know what our revenue estimates are every year. And we typically don't get those until end of September, October. The final summary mill levy report comes from the county, And I looked and we got last year's, it was dated November 2nd. So a lot of times they find little tweaks and things that need to occur when they're preparing that report. So that's why there's such a delay. So we, as an agency, have adopted the policy that we use last year's revenue estimates when we're preparing our next fiscal year budget. These numbers up here, you will see the 446,952, last year's revenue, adjusted revenue based on final mill levies and taxable values for Riverfront Triangle. State reimbursements, moving on to state reimbursements. We are reimbursed from the state of Montana for any type of revenue we might lose through changes in how they tax property. And we've been receiving reimbursements for ERD2 gets a large entitlement reimbursement, and a couple other property tax bills that have gone through the legislature, and they all get reimbursed through what's called an entitlement share, which comes to our agency twice a year, semi-annually, in November and in May. And those are all outlined in our audit. So if you're interested to trace back through the history of those are there. This year in legislative session 2021, they passed a bill, House Bill 303. And that actually raised the exemption level on Class 8 property. So instead of your first $100,000 worth of property, personal property being exempt from taxes, now it's $300,000 first exempt from taxes. So therefore, there is a loss of tax revenue to the taxing jurisdictions and flowing down to MRA then. So that's the history on that. So that's explaining the state reimbursements. This is the amount that schedule comes out from the Department of Revenue, what the reimbursements amounts will be. And this is the amount for Riverfront Triangle. Moving down under debt service, and this obviously, I'm going to go through this fairly slow on this one, but then now that we have all the explanations out in front of us, the other districts will go fairly quickly. Debt service requirements. Macy asked me a good question. What is debt service? And so we're working on what we use for names. Makes a lot of sense to me and probably to the board, but new folks out in the community may not understand our reports as easily as I might think they do. So we might change that to our bond payments, or or making sure that they understand that Stockman Bank right now, that they're not getting a payment from us on a monthly basis. This is debt that we incurred on their behalf that we are paying off. So that is those are updated annually from the debt service schedules. Down onto expenditures. Administrative expenses. All of the agency's administrative expenses, as the board knows and the staff, but for those in the community that might be watching, are paid from one of our districts. The other districts reimburse that one district, which is ERD3 in this case, at the end of the year based on project time spent in each of those districts. So we track staff hours. That's why we do those staff activity spreadsheets that you review usually on a monthly basis. Not only do those provide the board a glimpse of what we're working on and where we're spending the staff hours, but also that on the back end is how we come up with those amounts. These are estimates that we start out with at the beginning of the year, and those are reconciled at the end of the year, and I do the transfers to ERD3. So for this particular Riverfront Triangle, it's $100,000. Jump in if you have questions. I'm not watching. Let's see, I should move everybody over. So if you're raising your hand, Carl's got an eye on that. Moving down, this district, we don't have any active projects in Riverfront Triangle. As you know, our big project for Riverfront Triangle is the Riverfront Triangle. And we'd like to see that get going. So there we drop down to what's remaining for unallocated funds. We call those contingency funds in the agency since I started working here. And so those are another term for those for the community is unallocated funds that the board looks at that is available for projects that come in the door. Dropping down, there's a reconciliation. So down here we have like to date, that's our fund balance. We follow it up here. That would be our carryover. Obviously no revenues yet, but that's how we track our fund balance. But contingency unallocated funds, 639,956. Any questions on Riverfront Triangle?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. What did I do with my other? Here we go. It works. Oh. having trouble getting into my other documents. Here. Okay, Front Street up. Everybody, Carl?
Front Street is up.
Thank you. So here we go. Front Street, I will scroll down so it keeps it big. 731 estimated carryover beginning fund balance. Tax increment 1.6 million. Reimbursements 63,000. Total revenues. Then we add that to the cash and have our funds available prior to debt service, prior to our bond payments. Bond payment schedules have all been updated. We have 883,000 in debt service payments coming out of our, so when you look, it's about half of our tax increment revenue goes to bonds in this Front Street district, which is why this Front Street district's been kind of a slow mover. We're carrying a lot of debt right now. Our transfers budgeted from this district to ERD 3, $200,000. Riverfront Triangle and Front Street have been districts that kind of were obviously slow getting going. Might be an understatement for Riverfront Triangle, but those we kind of, if there's no money in there to reimburse those administrative costs that we incurred at the beginning of the district when it was forming or the first few years, then we track those and we work on those. We pay them back when those funds are available. Dropping down to our public-private partnerships. Tried to relabel these so it's fairly clear that these are not just private projects, they are partnerships that we work with private developers on their projects to fund the public improvement projects as defined by state law, what those public benefits are in those projects. In this particular case, for this one, it's deconstruction and right-of-way improvements. Here's our other hotel that's being constructed that we anticipate should be done. I think December is when they hopefully for sure will be done by. Public improvement projects. These are solely public improvement projects that we are able to fund only because we have tax increment financing coming into the district funds from other projects that we've invested in prior that have generated additional taxes. So once there's a fund there for us to go to, then we are able to fund some of these really awesome, strictly public projects that the board has approved over the years. The Missoula Public Library building being one of those. Our total commitment was $500,000, and in FY23, this will be the final $75,000 that we pay to that foundation. And then we also have a redevelopment amount in here for developing a plan for that old library block and the property that was donated to the city by the Payne family. Right now, we don't have any public-private partnerships that are using our specific programs that the board has adopted over the years outside of our general TIF funding. Scrolling down to contingency, 532,000 in Front Street. And there's our bottom reconciliation. Any questions on Front Street?
Don't see any.
All righty.
Move on to ERD 2.
Yep. Oops, here. ERD 2. Dropping in with just over $1 million in fund balance for ERD 2. This is a lower amount than we typically have, but if you recall, the MRA board approved the reimbursement to the city of Missoula for the Bridge Apartments project, the Bridge Apartments building complex. The city acquired that through with their own funds, with a backstop being the MRA funds to save that building from being sold and displacing the residents in that facility. And at this time, the city has been looking for a development mechanism, a partnership, or looking for somebody to manage that project for the city on their behalf. And Ellen would know a lot more details of the intricacies of where we are, but they did require that we did ask us if we would reimburse them for that cost, and that was in our budget. We looked at our cash to see whether or not some projects wouldn't be coming in for a while versus bonding. There's a lot of stuff in ERD 2 that we are looking at bonding for because the board has adopted that 9-year strategic exit plan, and so we were able to come up with the funds to reimburse the city for the bridge apartments, and we are anticipating bonding for the reimbursement of that. So those funds will be available again, like to us again in order to fund some additional projects that we'd like to complete in the district before the sunset. Here's ERD's tax increment, 3.9 million, state reimbursements, 486. Dropping down to our debt service, of course, those are the current debt that we service in that district. For those projects, again, those projects happened on the years that they're stated in the series of the bonds, and those are the payback amounts on an annual basis. Dropping down to administrative transfers, again, I covered that, $400,000 budgeted in ERD 2 to reimburse ERD 3. Jumping to our public-private partnerships that are carried over. As you can see, the board approved several housing projects. Look at all 4 of them. Yay! Good job, everybody. We've got some housing projects that are going in, and small and the little Bateman duplex and the Burton Street Apartments, small projects, the Lanesbury duplex, but then we also have this large Bissinger Place housing project. So very proud of that as the staff. Again, jumping down to the public improvements, the longer a district is in existence, obviously the more funding that has come in over the years and the more flexibility we have to be responsive to the needs of the community through our public improvement projects. As you can see at the top, Todd's Bitterroot Trail lighting, that just approved it by the board in the CIP, $624,000. The rest of them there are just kind of carryover ones. We're almost done with that elections complex, only partway through that one, carryover. And the other ones, let's see, here are Todd's water and sidewalk projects that he mentioned that are gonna start up here this summer, or carry over. Looks like we talked about that, and we've got the design going, but those will carry over. This one right here, I want to highlight the MRL trestle and pedestrian bridge, one of the highest priorities, if not the highest priority in the board's ERD 2 exit strategy plan. That one is estimated in the capital improvement program as 3.5 million, and we would need to bond for that. So I've tried to label those in the areas where obviously we want that in there. That's a priority, but we would need to get the cost estimates on that first before we move forward with proposing a bond. Annette has a street tree project that's going in ERD 2 and ERD 3. Just want to highlight that that's another public benefit that I really value is being able to have a healthy urban forest, in particularly with our hot, not so much this spring, but hot temperatures that we typically have here in the summer. Moving down to contingency, $708,000 in contingency. I will note, and I did in my memo, that all of the urban renewal districts except for ERD 3 are below $1 million in contingency funds. And that's important for the board to know. So it gives you an idea of just kind of the flexibility that you would have in each of those districts. The only thing unique about this particular district in ERD 3 is that we have these long-term Mountain Water Company notes receivable. They were originally Mountain Water Company notes. That was that program that they had where if a property owner improved some water infrastructure, they could get repaid for those improvements over 40 years at the time that program existed. And so when MRA came in and was a part of a project that it had water improvements, MRA became the benefactor of those paybacks over 40 years. And when the Mountain Water Company was acquired by the city of Missoula took on that debt. And so those essentially we can't count that in our fund balance. It's considered an asset, but we have to back it out. So we're not overestimating our actual cash on hand available to help folks in our districts. Any questions on ERD 2?
Nope. Move on. Let's move on.
Moving on. Okay. ERD 3. ERD 3 is our most robust district. Estimated cash beginning cash balance, 7.3 million. 6.4 million in revenue. Here's the reimbursements from the other districts. That's one thing that's different on ERD 3. 1.2 million in debt service. This is the district that carries the administrative expenses of the agency. The personnel services, that's our payroll. Those payroll numbers come from finance. I don't develop those, but they're developed by finance. The city is planning for they are setting aside a 3% wage increase for non-union employees this year. There are a couple things into this administrative area that we have asked for increases through the city budget process and for the board. I outlined those in my memo. The supplies amount is the same that we've had in there probably for, it seems like probably 10, 20 years. It's just been set at that amount where, and then with COVID, a lot of those expenses went down as far as like paper and that kind of thing, copies, a lot of it, we went to the digital age. But under purchase services, you'll see that there is a 3% increase requested from the city for funding from MRA to the general fund. The city is currently undergoing a internal cost allocation study that is wrapping up. Not quite sure if that's going to be done in time for budget impacts, but that could change the number that they have determined that other departments provide the agency with services. And so they're cost allocating those to the departments that have their own funding sources. The other thing that we've requested is an actual communication budget of $5,000 for Macy. It's a new position for us. And so we wanted to have some funds in there that could address whatever we feel that, you know, with her assistance and guidance, the agency needs to help us do better in that area. I have also submitted a request in talking to the city clerk's office. When COVID first hit, we needed to pivot as a city to digitizing records. And so those records would be available to our citizens. So they were able to apply for American Rescue Plan funds to help fund that endeavor. And so they digitized pretty much the entire vault at City Hall. MRA's records have been determined as permanent records. We are unique enough in what we do that our records, our project files are permanent. So we have a basement full of project files that are not easily accessible. So we're requesting some funds to help us utilize the services that the city clerk's office did to help digitize the MRA records. We have a little things, audit increase for audit services, and some money in there to help us prepare to digitize those files. The files are not easily, they're not all uniform, and that makes it more affordable if they're all ready to go, and they're not. They are different sizes, and they would have to be gone through to a certain extent. Jumping down onto the projects.
Could I
Yep.
ask a question here, as long as we're at this point? I don't actually have last year's budget in front of me, but I'm sure you know off the top of your head, it wasn't in your memo. Assuming that personnel services includes the additional staff.
Yes.
And I would have assumed that they would need some supplies of their own. So I would have sort of expected supplies to go up. But if you can do it with that budget, good. Also with purchase services, does that include like the professional services with the contract that we have with Chris, for example?
So the professional services is right, and those are all divided by account number. So that's kind of how they divide up. Supplies are like a 200 account, and most of the supplies for Annie and Macy have already been purchased. So they'll be coming out. They came out in this fiscal year.
Okay.
So we don't really anticipate, going over that budget in the next year. The 300 accounts, those are your purchase services, your communication, so your postage, your printing, duplication, your publicity, subscription, and dues. So any publications that we want to, or any dues for agencies or professional agencies can kind of come out of those budgets. Chris's would be a professional service, and he would be paid out of that fund also. Right now, I checked in with Ellen, and we're not anticipating using Chris's services that much with the staff that we have on board now. So, but it was probably like an as needed kind of a basis. Did that answer your question, Ruth?
Yeah, I thought when we engaged BN Consulting that we had some kind of an estimate of what it would be for like the calendar year, and just was curious if that was, going to be, if that was included in the purchase services or not. Which I assume that if he's working on a project in the Riverfront Triangle, for example, that then that would get paid out of Riverfront Triangle. But because it all gets paid out of Erd 3, there would be some reimbursement.
Right. So I think what we do is we would, if Chris were to be engaged, and right now there isn't, so the amount, you're right, exactly right. When the board approved his contract, it was based on like an hourly rate times the minimum or maximum number of hours that he could work without jeopardizing his retirement status. And so that was 960 hours. And that was, we actually had amount of money left from vacancy savings to pay Chris for the work that he did prior to Annie's starting here at the agency. Ellen's out of town. I did touch base with her this morning to see if that was something that she specifically felt like we needed to carry over that full amount, or whether we would just pay Chris as needed for the work that he's been doing. And so to my knowledge, Annie's really taking on that project now, and Chris is helping only as needed. And so there, we will not need that entire large amount that we had estimated at the time that you approved his contract. But I will talk with Ellen more when she returns. Yeah,
that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, moving on. We have our water network improvements that you just looked at, and then just, you know, the street trees and everything else is like a carryover. We don't have any program projects outstanding right now. Dropping down to the contingency, this is the district that I said is most robust right now as far as our contingency funds. The board does have several large projects that they would like to move forward, and you know, and you're well aware of those. The Brook Street corridor is a big one. Okay, 5.3 million is the contingency amount right now budgeted for Earth 3. Any further questions on Earth 3? And I'll jump over to, we have 2 left.
One real quick one. Why do you have legal services in the public improvement projects and not as an administrative or personnel or contracted?
You know, the legal services is just an amount that lives in there. And I don't know if there's a really good reason, Carl, other than it's a line item that's been in the individual districts that we felt that we would most likely need, like just legal services on the fly, for example.
Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with paying lawyers.
For example, the brownfields, just we needed some, and so it's very difficult to be flexible and with the administrative budget. That one is tighter. That's you know, because it's supply based and it's, you know, right into certain account codes, where these are more project based, and you know, it allows us to have a little bit more flexibility to have that.
Okay. All right.
A planning and grant type of category.
Got it.
One of our budget activities.
All right. So Scott Street.
Yep, Scott Street, 1.9 million estimated beginning fund balance. Here's our revenue, 1.5. Dropping down, updated debt service requirements for the bonds that are outstanding in that district. 2.9 available after debt service. Estimated $100,000 transfer to Earth 3. Here's the projects that are ongoing right now. I've got 2 in here. So here's the infrastructure project that you just approved through Todd's capital improvement program. It's 3.5 million. Obviously, we don't have 3.5 million in this district, so we would need to bond for that project. And I know Ellen has talked about possibly rolling in the Villaggio project, since that one, you know, hasn't been paid out yet either, to maximize the cash available for other projects that come in before the board in this district. Dropping down to contingency, $875,000. You see my little note over here, effect of the tax appeals. I always back out any appeals that we get from the Department of Revenue. And that usually happens in November or December. So if there's any reduction, then that comes on the contingency. Do have a small note in here. Those get updated. Usually those numbers get updated at the end of the year. The city reimburses us the amounts needed. So those will change over the next month. Again, $875,000 in contingency on North Reserve Scott Street. Any questions?
Apparently not.
Okay, one more. Sorry if I'm moving so fast. I just want to be really mindful and respectful of your time, but still get through everything. Hellgate Urban Renewal District. Beginning fund balance is estimated at 831,000. Revenues 487 for a total before debt service of 1.3. As you can see, this is the one district that we do not have debt in. So that 1.3 carries down. Estimated transfer for time spent. This is probably high if this district is completely paid back Earth 3 already. Then it's probably high based on just staff time that is spent unless we had a lot of staff time that's going to be spent on projects that come in. This railroad quiet zone is still ongoing. It's the one project we have down here, just above $1 million in contingency in Hellgate Urban Renewal District. Any questions on Hellgate?
Okay,
Hey, thank you for your patience.
and that's the budget. Questions, overall questions, anything? Thanks for the thorough presentation. Appreciate it. We need to approve this to submit to the council, correct?
Correct. And I did want to make one further note, Carl, as the board knows and the staff too, probably, but those that may be listening, our budget is so fluid and it's changing all the time, which is the very reason why you get budget reports every month. And you have that budget column, you know, when that's finalized, when the city adopts its budget, that's finalized, that black column on your reports. But that next column is the adjusted. And so that's when we start adjusting things based on our final revenues and our final cash carryover amounts. So then we're actually dealing with a real picture moving forward.
Right. Our fluid budget. Okay. So the motion is to approve the budget for submittal to the council. Is that correct, Joe? You're muted. You're muted.
Yep, sorry. Yep, that would be fine.
So is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Okay. And Melanie, will you second it, please?
Second that.
All right. Any further discussion or any public comment?
Let me jump over, Carl. I don't have any public people on the call anymore, just our MCAT producer. So nobody wanted to stick around for my budget.
Well, they're lost.
Appreciate it.
I don't know why. Like, why doesn't everybody love numbers?
That's their loss, right? Okay, if not, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous of the three people who are here, so that's the quorum that we need. And thank you very much. Passes.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we have a non-action item, right? Annie?
Yes, so the agenda I'm looking at, the non-action item is clarification on Casa Loma. Is that what you're seeing? Okay.
Yes, that is what I'm seeing.
All right.
Did I skip something?
There's a CIP item on there first, Annie.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry, I apologize. We probably should have done this when we were talking about CIP when following Todd's presentation. This is just a brief update to let you know that in addition to the MRA CIP items that will be submitted to council, council will also be receiving 2 CIP projects that are Parks and Recreation Department CIPs with some MRA funding shown. So those are not yet included in the budget. They will need to come to you for budget approval, but I wanted to let you know about them. So you, if you review the CIP and you see MRA funding, you're aware. The Parks Department knows that they will need to come with a presentation to the board likely this summer to present these projects and get approval of both the project and the budget. So the 2 projects very quickly, one is the Flynn Lowney area improvements. This is another priority identified in the ERD 2 strategic exit plan. It involves a number of components in the proposed CIP for the coming fiscal year. There's 400,000 shown in MRA or ERD2 funding to support planning and feasibility study. So this includes riverbank stabilization along the Clark Fork, modifications for fish passage and recreation, and trail connection between the railroad trestle and Burton Street. So for fiscal year 2023, the concept is, again, feasibility and planning. The other project, just briefly, is one that's identified in the North Reserve Scott Street Master Plan. And that is enhancements to White Pine Park, which is currently adjacent to Scott Street. This is again one that Parks is in the lead. And the concept here is improvements to enhancements to the park, essentially replacing the park with a larger park with more amenities in a better location for the neighborhood, which isn't adjacent to a busy street. And then ultimately in the future, seeing housing on the current location of the park. The final location for that enhanced and improved White Pine Park has not been identified, and Parks is currently in negotiations. So there is a placeholder in the park CIP, and when that location is identified and the purchase price or lease price identified, Parks would come to the board with a request, again, for that project and for the funding. So that is all I wanted to share on CIP.
Ruth, did you have something?
Did I miss it? Did they have an estimated amount for that request?
I believe they are showing up to 3 million in the CIP project sheet, but again, that will really depend on whether it's a lease scenario or a purchase, and then based on an appraisal. Yes.
Okay.
All right. And there's nothing, that's for our information, right?
Correct. No
Okay.
action, just an update. Yep.
Okay, so now we get to your memo on the Casa Loma.
Yes, and I can share.
Oh, I didn't ask. I'm sorry, Annie. Did anybody have anything else on those CIP, additional CIP items? Okay, so the Casa Loma clarification.
Yes, I just wanted to be really clear. There was an error in my memo, and it was very clear from the applicant in the meeting minutes when we reread them that they provided the board with correct information in terms of the affordability mix. It was clear in their application. I just missed it. So this this memo is so that we're clear for the record that the request from Casa Loma was for, in terms of the affordability piece, was that 20% of the rental units would be available to individuals earning 80% of area median income or less, compared to what I had included in my memo, which was 20% of the overall units. So they are including a mix of rental and home ownership in the project. And so the 20% is of the rental units. So that equates to 22 rental units for individuals earning 80% of AMI or below. And they did share in the meeting, and is referenced in the minutes, that they are also hoping to target the for sale homeownership units for individuals earning 120% of area median income or below as well. So the hope is that the whole project will be a mixed income housing project for individuals across the income spectrum. So unless there are questions, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Questions?
No, I felt like it was clear from the meeting, so knew what we were voting on.
Good. Well, I wasn't there, and I noticed that when I wasn't there, you guys spent some real money. You know,
Erd 3 has the money to spend.
well, yeah, I just, hey, look, Carl's not here. Let's get up into the millions. Budget reports then is the next item. Jill, anything? Seems like we've been looking at budget reports for a while now. Anything to point out?
I don't have anything to add unless there's questions. We spent a lot of time going over the budget for FY23, so I'll just happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for Jill? If not, then I think that's it, right?
I do have something for other items if when you get there.
Okay, well, we have no committee reports to make unless somebody formed a committee when I was
Out.
when I was gone.
So this, just a reminder from Leslie that she'd like me to share. Next month's board meeting is finally, Carl, to your question, are we back in person yet? Yes. Next month, we will be back in person in the Hal Fraser conference room for a Microsoft Teams version of our board meeting. So it'll still be, I mean, it'll be hybrid, but the boards are going in person for that month, and we will have support staff there helping us with that transition and navigating new software. So we are asking that all the board members attend the July board meeting in the Hal Fraser room. The city council has actually passed a resolution, like encouraging all of the boards to meet in person, and we will still maintain the hybrid option for our citizens, so they can come in that way, call in or video in, but the boards are asked to meet in person. So obviously, if there's something that comes up and you are unable to do that, please let us know. We do have the capability of you coming in by video. And then the August meeting will be open to the public. So that means that you will be in the room, but we would have the ability to have the public in person also. So that is the plan and the rollout for boards and commission meetings moving forward. Any comments, concerns? You can reach out to us later.
Right. Well, if there's, I mean, I know that when we talked about, we were close to doing this before, and there was a member that had some special problems, and of course we'll deal with those. So anybody that's
Absolutely.
anybody that needs to deal with it, we'll deal with it. Otherwise, be nice to see everybody in person.
Yeah.
Melanie.
I had one quick thing, and we could talk about this, and we'll talk about this moving down the road, but the Midtown Association signed a contract today with the design team who will be leading in the Midtown Master Plan process, and so grateful for the MRA's help with that. The design team will introduce you to them. They are coming as of next week to do a deep dive into existing conditions. And then this fall, we'll be back to lead the community in the public charrette process. But we are off and running.
Hey.
Yeah. And I could say it now that things have been signed. It is Econ Northwest and Sarah Design who will be leading us in that process. Well,
we'll look forward to meeting them, huh? We're gonna get to meet them.
You are absolutely this fall. Yeah. And okay. Annette and Ellen are meeting with them a bunch. We're so grateful to have her next week. She will be doing quite a bit related to that Brooks corridor and all sorts of things when they're here. They're doing walking interdisciplinary audits of the Brooks corridor. I'm sure people will see them as their team is all around Midtown doing a deep dive into existing conditions next week.
Annette, did you have something to add?
I just want to jump in for a hair on this. We have not heard from the FTA yet with regard to the Brooks Corridor project. However, I just want to make you aware that we are starting an Engage Missoula page. It should go live on Monday of next week specifically about that project, because there's been, as Melanie and Rachel, the community engagement person on the master plan, have discovered, when they want to talk about the master plan, all people I think are familiar with is the Brooks project. That's all they want to talk about. And the master plan wants to defer that to us. So we're going to start an Engage Missoula page. It doesn't mean that we're moving on the project yet, but it's a repository and a place for people to get more information.
Okay, anything else? Jill, did you have something?
Yes, reading sticking out more closely, the July board meeting for the hybrid teams meeting, they're asking the board to arrive 30 minutes early. So if you could mark your calendars to be here 30 minutes early for that July 21st board meeting, that would be great, just to make sure everything is working. And we've got. And
I will. I'll communicate with Leslie. I noticed that when the final run up to the dinner we had with Nancy, that I wasn't getting stuff. I saw stuff from other people, but not from Leslie. So somehow or another, I've dropped off her list, which is probably a sign that something's about to happen to me. But
we'll double check to make sure we have.
Make sure Leslie. yeah, we were told you were history. What happened? Anyway, I'll send her a little note and we'll get that straightened out. And I apologize for today because that's her notes are what always reminds me to.
Yeah, and she's good about sending them out.
Yeah, she is.
we'll get that figured out.
And to Jill, to you and to Leslie in particular, thank you very much again for doing that nice thing for Nancy. I think it was. I'm sorry we missed you, Melanie. It was a nice evening, and I think it meant something to her. And Lord knows we owe her a huge debt of gratitude.
I hope she's watching. It was a wonderful evening, and we're very, very thankful to her and all of you.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all, and we'll see you in person.
Thanks.